1, 2.
We want to take a photo of the drink.
Hey, what's up, guys? So I think a lot of people know about the parallels between poker and the quant trading world. When I was interviewing to be a quant trader, I would get asked poker questions in the interviews all the time. They're trying to understand how you think and whether you're a good strategic thinker, because there's a lot of risk management and, when do you double down versus when do you fold? A lot of these concepts transcend poker. So poker is a microcosm to a lot of these concepts. But one area that I find people haven't explored too much is the parallels between poker and dating. There are actually quite a few, and that's what this video is going to be about. So let's get into it. So the first parallel is tournament short stack play. If you play poker tournaments, when you're a short stack and you're about to get blinded out, you have no choice but to shove or fold. You basically just want to pick spots and go all in. And so how does this apply to dating? Early in the dating stages, a girl is either starting to like you more or starting to like you less. And so you can sense, if you have any EQ at all, you can sense whether she's starting to lose interest in you. And you're about to be eliminated from the tournament. So what you want to do in these spots is you want to go all in. And it's basically your only chance to get back in the game, just like with a poker tournament. So a more tangible example of what that looks like is you want to set up a date at a nice place that's like right near her house. It's really convenient for her to come out. And you want to show up on the date in like a Trump MAGA hat, something like that. And then you just want to be like, oh yeah, I just want to be who I want to be. If someone doesn't think I'm allowed to wear this, that's their problem. But I'm going to stand up for what I believe in. You want to do something really bold like that. So let's say this girl's some college graduate girl in her 20s. Like, there is a 95+% chance that she's going to just be appalled by you, just repulsed by you. And she's just going to be like, okay, buddy, I gotta go. See you never. And that's okay, because there's a 5% chance that she's going to be like a secret Trump-loving Republican. And she's going to be like, damn, this guy has balls. I like this guy. I can't believe I was about to reject him. And so you're back in the game now. Mathematically, what happened there, right? You were dwindling. You were pretty much about to be eliminated from the tournament, but you exposed yourself to variance. When you expose yourself to variance, you're either going to spike up or spike down. But here's the thing. It's like an option. It's like a call option. There's a strike price. Even if you crash down 10%, it doesn't matter, because you can't go below 0, right? So she was going to reject you anyways. So it doesn't really matter whether she rejects you because she's just lost interest in you, or she rejects you because she hates you. Both of those have the same result for you. It just means you're not going to get to date her. So exposing yourself to variance in such a way that you now have a chance to swing back up 10% and be back in the game, that is the correct play when you talk about expected value. Throwing the Hail Mary is better than just giving up, right? The next parallel between poker and dating is the feeler bet or the probe bet. So in poker, there's this concept called the feeler bet, where you basically make a smallish bet to try to get a feel for their range, to try to get an idea of the strength of their hand. What's an example of this in dating? In dating, you should always try to kiss the girl at the end of the first date. Now, if you can smash at the end of the first date, that's even better. But if the energy doesn't feel like it's going in that direction, you want to try to get just a light peck in. And of course, use your judgment. If the girl is giving you really bad signals, then just give up. It's over. But if she seems kind of lukewarm about you, go for the peck. And the reason for this is it's a feeler bet. Basically, pay attention to how she responds carefully. Because basically, if she kisses you back, does she kiss you back enthusiastically? Does she kiss you back in a sort of obligatory way? Does she flinch? That's not good. Does she flinch but then like laugh and smile and say like, oh, I would kiss you, but I just wasn't ready for that. You get a lot of good information when you go for the peck. And even if she flinches, you get information on where you stand. Does she flinch because she's repulsed? Like, look at the look on her face. Or does she flinch because she just didn't expect you to do that? But then she laughs afterwards and goes like, wow, I just didn't put you as a guy who would go for that. Basically, you get real information when you go for the peck. And the problem is when you're dating a girl, it's hard to ever get real information about where you stand in the hand because you can't just ask her, right? One, culturally, it's awkward. Like, it feels so cold and transactional to say, now, the first date just ended, over text. The first date just ended. Where would you rate me now? What have I gained attraction or lost attraction in your mind? And then like she's not gonna be like, well, you're about 2 points lower in looks than I expected from your pictures. Your voice is a little bit weird, so you lost 1 or 2 points there. Like she's not gonna say these things. And it's not because women are dishonest or something. It's just because women tend to avoid confrontation because they're the smaller gender and they have the concern of like a dude taking it the wrong way and getting all violent on her. And now she has a problem where like some creepy dude might wait outside of her house or something. And women have this concern. I think men don't understand this. So it's not that women are dishonest, but they have to sugarcoat things. And so you never really know like whether she likes you or not. And that's the whole point of the feeler bet. That's the whole point of trying to get the kiss at the end of the first date. So you can read the situation there and know where she ranks you from that small interaction. The reason why it's important to get that information is because in 2025, there's this entire class of women who will just use you for date after date. Like they'll have you in their phone as foodie date and just, you'll go on 4 dates and be like, so where's this going? Do you like me? Or, and then they'll pretend they took 4 dates to figure it out. Like, oh, after the 3rd date, I was starting to like sort out whether I like you. By the 4th Michelin star date, I'm starting to think maybe we're not that compatible because, you said you like Star Wars. They're just going to say something like that, even though they knew in the first 30 seconds of meeting you whether they liked you or not. I mean, there's data on this. You can look it up. Do a Google search. Women decide whether they're attracted to you or not within the first 10 to 30 seconds of meeting you. So basically everything after that is just going through the motions. If they like you, you can just say like ridiculous stuff and they'll just like rationalize it. Like, oh, he's just going through a phase. Once I can change him, I can fix him. And if they don't like you, then, you can be like, yeah, my free time, I save puppies and I have an orphanage where I save orphans. And they'll just be like, yeah, shut up. When is this date gonna end? Like, hurry up and pay for it. I want to go, hook up with the hot guy in my DMs. And so it's pretty much deterministic, and it's inefficient to just keep going on dates and thinking you're going to win them over. They decided within the first 10 to 30 seconds. Unless you have something that will change your status in a big way, like you're secretly a billionaire or, you're a famous concert pianist or something, like you're not going to move the needle much. Like I said in a previous video, looks is about 70-80%. Well, let's call it 70%. So she decided whether she wants to date you or not within the first 30 seconds or so of meeting you. By your appearance, your posture, your voice, and if you smile and your teeth look nice, she's decided pretty much. And from there, you just can't blow it. So yeah, that's the reason why you want to do the feeler bet, to find out where you actually stand and just to figure that out. And so what if she just goes, ugh, and she's repulsed? Whatever. Now she doesn't like you. Good. That's efficient. Now you don't have to go on 4 more dates before she makes up some excuse about why she doesn't like you, right? So if you play poker, right, there's this concept called the continuation bet, where if you raise pre-flop and then you get to the flop, you're supposed to bet there again. And it's pretty much textbook at this point. Any poker player knows that generally they should continuation bet because it has a higher EV. More amateurish players don't like the C-bet. And even though it has a higher EV, it's on average a more winning play. What they don't like about the C-bet is that a percentage of the time you're going to bluff into a made hand. And that's embarrassing to them, basically. They don't like just giving away money. When you c-bet, people know you're bluffing a lot because only 30% of hands actually hit the flop in some way and pair the flop in some way. And so if you're just c-betting every time, it means you're bluffing 70% of the time. For a lot of people, it doesn't feel natural to bluff that frequently. And they just don't like the idea of someone sitting there with aces just giggling, and then you just bet the flop and then they just giggle and re-raise you. And it's hard on their ego, but it's on average a more winning play. As unnatural as it feels to you to put out that bluff, it is the correct play statistically. And so how does this apply to dating? In dating, you have to take stabs at the pot. You just have to go for it. And you have to leave your ego at the door. And that's how you yield the highest results in terms of just purely optimizing for results. People who have egos, they don't get they don't get as many girls as people who just don't care about their ego and purely just go for it. It's kind of like the expression, you make 0% of the shots you don't take, right? It's better to take 10 shots and make one of them than to be 0 for 0, right? Because people are so fixated on the 9 out of 10 that you missed. So when you're hitting on girls, for example, people get so hung up on, oh, but then people are going to see me getting rejected. Bro, get out of your own head. People don't care about you. People care about themselves. They might poke fun at you for 1 second and then they're thinking about themselves the next second. Take as many shots as possible, even if you're 1 for 10 or 2 for 10. The next day, you have 1 or 2 leads. And the other guy who went 0 for 0, while they might make fun of you for being rejected 8 times, they have 0 leads, right? And it works the same way for applying to jobs and things like that. You have to overcome this sense of ego. You know, who cares? It is more optimal statistically to just keep taking stabs at the pot and play the law of large numbers. The next point is, don't play your cards, play the player. I'm sure you've heard this expression if you hang out in poker circles, but in poker it basically means the strength of your hand isn't as important as understanding how to play your opponent. If you're playing against a super tight player, you can just bluff him with any 2 cards. And if you're playing against a super loose player, you can trap him. You just wait till you have a big hand and then you just trap him. And so understanding the player you're playing against is way more important than the actual strength of your hand. And so how does this apply to dating? In dating, an objectively strong hand would be your metrics of how attractive you are, right? How tall you are, how good looking your face is, how much money you make at your job, things like money and status. And so you might think, okay, so that's the main thing that's important. But it's more important to understand the player or the girl that you're trying to get, right? So let's say you're dating a 20-something-year-old college graduate, like a cute white girl with blue hair and like one of those like piercings, like that looks like a bull, septum piercing or whatever. The way you would play the player in this situation, like let's say for me as an Asian dude, you would basically say something like, it's appalling how these cisgendered white men just continue to run the patriarchy and keep themselves at the top of the dominance hierarchy. And basically when you say stuff like that, one, she likes hearing that kind of stuff, you know, that's her ideology. And 2, it'll sort of like shame her into dating you because then she'll start to feel secretly racist if she doesn't date you. And so that's the sleight of hand there. You basically kind of lean into all that like really progressive talk and say like, oh, these cisgendered straight white men, they just continue to dominate the dating pool, colonizing women of all races. And we need to flip that on its head, create dating equality. That's an example of playing the player there, right? That's how you would play that prototypical, really progressive white girl, right? But let's say you're dating like an Asian girl, for example, like a Chinese girl. A lot of East Asians are really big on academics and how much money you're making and things like this. So you really need to lean into that stuff. In particular with Chinese girls, they're really big on real estate and owning a car. It's just part of the culture. Like they won't marry you unless you own real estate and you own a car. Like you could be in debt, but if you own those things, you're the man. And likewise, you could be worth $50 million, but if it's all in equity and you don't own real estate or a car, they'll think you're homeless. Like it's just a thing. You know, you can ask Chinese girls about it. So knowing this, when you date Chinese girls, you have to play the player. So if you don't own a home, you have to say things like, oh, you know, I'm looking at buying a place in the Trump Tower right now, the penthouse ideally, you know, once my next bonus comes in. I'm really picky about where I want to live. I have some rental properties out in New York City, you know, stuff like this, in order to like keep them interested. Because I promise you, I've been on these dates and I said, oh, well, I just like to rent because I don't want to be stuck somewhere. They just go, and they just think you're broke. Like one girl literally thought, like, I was making a ton of money at this point in Wall Street, and she thought I was like near homeless because I didn't own a home. Like it's just a cultural thing. So you need to be mindful of that, and you need to play the player. In the game of poker, you have to tell a consistent story if you're going to pull off a bluff, right? The bluff has to make sense based on what you're doing and what cards are coming out on the board. And if there's any inconsistency, your opponents, if they're good, can sniff it out, and then they know you don't actually have the hand you're representing. And so the same applies to dating. Women have a very high EQ. and they can sniff out any incongruence in your behavior. So if you're gonna bluff to try to get a girl a little bit out of your league by saying, you're a tougher guy than you are, like, oh yeah, that guy disrespected me, I put him in his place, well, you're gonna have to live that up. Like, if someone bumps into you at the bar, you're gonna have to be like, my man, watch where you're going. Because if you don't do that, she's gonna be like, I guess this guy's not that tough after all. She's gonna sniff that out. Women have a high EQ, and they evolve to be that way, because if there's any incongruence in your actions versus your words, she could be dating like a serial killer, right? Like, she wants to make sure you are who you say you are. And if she sniffs out that you're lying, it's a huge ick, because it's dangerous for her. It's like, oh, this guy's deceiving me. There's like something about him he's representing a certain type of personality, but he's not that person. And that's a huge ick for girls. So if your strategy is to date girls that are a little bit out of your league, and you do it by bluffing about one or two attributes, like how tough and strong you are, or how much money you're making. Like, let's say you go with the money angle, like, oh yeah, I'm closing some deals, I have multiple properties. Like, let's say you're doing that. You're gonna have to pretty consistently spend money until you close. And if you're not ready to do that, she's gonna sniff it out. Like, you're gonna have to be tipping 20% on every meal. She's gonna check. She's gonna see, oh, was that a 20% tip? And if you tip like 12%, it's over. She's gonna be like, nah, bro, you ain't rich. And if you start arguing, you have to be, if you check the bill to see that everything is right, she's gonna get dry, bro. Like, that's not baller behavior, is it? If you dispute something, even if they made a mistake, even if they slipped an extra drink in there, you gotta let it go. If you dispute that, like, excuse me, we didn't order this cocktail. She's gonna be like, I thought this guy was rich. He's actually checking for those things? That's annoying. That means, like, after the 5th date or so, he's gonna start expecting me to go half. Why should I hook up with this guy? He's gonna just make me go half, like, a month into dating him. This guy is not who I thought he was. I wanted to mooch off of him the entire time we're dating, right? And so remember to tell a consistent story, both in poker and in dating. And a final bonus point for sticking around this long: value betting. These are concepts in poker as well. You want to bet size, the optimal size, to induce a call. And so it's important to optimize for these type of little details in the long run to play the most plus EV poker. And so in dating, the same concept applies. If you're dating a girl and she's really into you, you don't need to waste money on the date. You can just say, oh yeah, let's go to the library and go for a walk in the park. And she'll be like, yeah, okay, let's do that. And then, she'll just tell her friends, oh, he's so romantic, he didn't take me on a boring food date. He wanted to walk in the park with me. It was like a dream, and she'll just justify everything. And her friends will be like, but doesn't that mean he's cheap? And she'll be like, no, honey, it means he's dreamy. And that's just how that goes. Girls will rationalize everything after they've decided they like you. But there's a spectrum, right, of how much they like you. If they're very reluctantly going on the date with you, they're really not that into you. You got to make it really convenient for her, right? You have to take her to like a Michelin star restaurant. It has to be close to her place, and you got to send her an Uber both ways. And you got to be like, oh, no problem. That's just how I roll. When I date girls, that's just how it is. That's how they get treated. And so you really got to put in all that extra work, because she's just not that into you. And so money is basically closing the looks gap, right? Because when you're dating someone, it's a market, right? There's a bid and an ask. And the trade happens when both sides meet in the middle, right? When this person's willing to sell here and this person's willing to buy there, and they meet in the middle, that's when the trade happens. And so if the gap is too wide, then both parties don't get what they want, and then the trade just never happens. And so this gap here, you close this gap with money. So when the girl's super into you, right, she's not saying, no, you better come up here. She's like all the way down here. And so the trade's going to happen no matter what. So don't spend any money. Just, okay, well, why don't you just come over? Want to pick up a pizza on your way over here? I'm hungry. And she'll be like, oh, you're so funny. Okay, what toppings? And she'll come over, right? And you'll just smash. But then if the market is wide and she's just not into you, you got to this is all money you got to be spending to get up there and then seal the deal, right? And so how do you know? How do you know what this gap is? Well, there are metrics and indicators, and you can really sniff it out just through text alone, right? So some metrics are like the ratio of how many messages she sends versus she receives, right? ideally you want the ratio to be 1-to-1. I mean, if she's super into you, she's actually going to be texting you more than you text her. But, you know, typically the men are the chasers, so 1-to-1 is a pretty good ratio. And how long her text messages are, the ratio of how long her text messages are versus how long your text messages are, right? Ideally, you want that to be 1-to-1 as well. If your text messages are long and have all these questions in it, and her text messages are one-word answers, you're not in good shape. That means the market's really wide. And other indicators of interest are like the ratio of smileys in her messages versus yours. If she's sending you a bunch of smileys and you're just like, what's all this about? That's good, you know, but ideally you want that ratio to be 1 as well. And then the ratio of how long it takes each of you to reply to text messages. If she's insta replying back, snap calling, and, you know, or versus if she's taking 2 days to get back to you. Those are all different metrics. And I actually have an app idea. If one of you wants to steal it, we could call the app like, Are They Into You or something. But you could just take the text transcript from a text exchange with someone you met off Tinder or something, and just put it into the algorithm, and the algorithm will just churn through all of those metrics I just went through and calculate all those ratios and then spit out a score to you of, you know, whether she's into you or whether she's not. Because some people are kind of, you know, a little bit on the autism spectrum, and they can't just sniff these things out intuitively. So they might need an app that just tells them those things and just spits the score out at them. But nevertheless, if the score is close to 1, the ratio of all those things, then you're pretty good. And the market is pretty tight, and you don't really need to spend that much money. Find out what that score is, and then spend the optimal amount of money on each date. Don't overspend on girls that, you know, already like you, and don't underspend on girls that you need to spend more on to close the gap, or it'll never close and she'll just ghost you, right? And then over your dating life, dating history, you'll be shaving dollars off of each date and in such a way that at the end of your 20s, you'll probably have saved like $20,000 or more on dates. Forget like, you know, cutting out lattes from your budget, your dating budget. Optimize that, and you'll save tens of thousands of dollars every year. I promise you that. All right, well, that's the list. So hopefully you learned a lot about the strategic poker thinking and how you can apply that to your dating life. And that's what it's all about, right? It's all about optimizing for every dollar spent per unit of ass that you're crushing, right? That's how you keep score as a man. And you want that ratio to be as efficient as possible so your name can be up there with the greats, right? All the great conquerors in the world, from Genghis Khan to Alexander the Great, Fidel Castro. I mean, these guys smashed, bro. Fidel Castro's body count is in the 5 figures. Look it up. All of these guys, Mao Zedong, these guys smashed. And you want your name to be etched up there with the greats, right? Any big name celebrity, Will Chamberlain, Michael Jordan, these guys got bodies, bro. And you want your body count to be up there with them, with the greats. That's how we keep score of how dominant of a man you were in your life. And this is how you do it, right? People don't have infinite money, so they have to use their money optimally per unit of ass smashed. So let me know if you have any questions. Leave me comments. Take care, guys.